Hi guys, Claudia Boleyn here. Sorry if I'm talking a bit more quietly than usual, it's just that like mum is home because it's half term and I'm not comfortable talking when there's other people around. I don't know, it's something I have to work through. I don't know if anyone else gets that, where like I don't like people hearing me on the phone or talking about things, and it's like that feeling at school when like you're doing a test and the invigilators kind of like walk past and look over your shoulder and don't say anything. It's like, yeah, I get really like stressed about that for some reason, I don't know why. But yeah, sorry if the volume is a bit lower. I'll try and lift it when I edit the video. So yeah, this is another post-therapy vlog. If my tone of voice is different to usual, again, it's because I'm trying to not like be uncomfortable and stop talking, because I just get nervous when people can hear. I don't know, I guess like because I'm a perfectionist and I get worried about people hearing me like slip up or like, I don't know. It's just horrible. That's what I like about YouTube, is that I'm getting to like have my own space with my own thoughts and opinions and my own voice, and I can kind of like, I can edit that and like think about things, and I don't know, it's just something that's still quite like vulnerable and tentative for me even now. Like after doing it since I was 19, it still feels, I don't know, it feels very precious to me. So I just get nervous when people can hear. I'm sorry, I don't even know why I'm telling you this. So anyway, yeah, so I had my therapy today and I'm trying to work on like self-love, which is, I don't know, sometimes people think that self-love is really selfish, but I actually think it's a really, really good thing, because you know how RuPaul says, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? I don't necessarily agree with that, by the way. Like, I think that if you don't love yourself, you can still show love to other people. And sometimes you can learn to love yourself through showing love to other people. Just to break in and apologise, one of my things I do is over-apologise. As you know, I have no control over this, the light. It's a weird time of the day. I'm going to be glowing at different points. I can't really do anything about that, I'm sorry. But I definitely think that if we like learn to love and accept ourselves, maybe not love ourselves, but you know, not to judge ourselves so harshly, then I think maybe we don't judge others so harshly. Because I definitely think that people that do lash out at other people and can be quite cruel and judgmental, I think that that's because within them they carry a lot of harsh judgments in their own heads about themselves. So yeah, it's good for people to love themselves, I think, and have confidence in themselves, because I think I touched on it on another video, you know, you don't need to be a jealous or competitive person if you're somebody who, you know, knows your own worth, you know. Not saying that if you're someone who doesn't love yourself, you automatically have to be like a jealous or competitive person. But I think people in the world, in society, like when you look at the world, there's a lot of harsh feelings people have towards themselves, unkindness as they were taught to feel about themselves, and they never understood it. Maybe they were taught that emotion was bad or that it was weakness, and so they kind of continued the cycle, and that still goes on in their heads. You know, they're a victim too, but they're also further making more victims. So nobody wins really, as much as I feel sorry for those people, not to excuse their behaviour, but nobody wins because it comes from a place of pain, I think. I don't think there are that many people in the world that are truly evil in the sense that they consider themselves to be evil. That doesn't mean they don't do evil, bad things, but I do think that a lot of the problems in the world could be fixed if we taught, especially with kids, like loving themselves, boundaries, to love other people, to be happy for other people, that love is limitless, that if we work together there's enough to go around, that we can lift each other up. I just think a lot of problems would be solved. You'd probably still get, you know, some people that were really awful, but I do think a lot of it's just recycled pain. It's just pain that just plays through generations, and it comes through and through and through. And without getting too specific, I'm sure you probably can see that in your own lives. A lot of you guys have a lot of insight, I think, into psychology, and in some ways that kind of saves you a bit. I mean, I spoke about how I became very interested in like how people worked, empathising, trying to understand minds to cope with a lot of my childhood situation. And I think that having that insight, while it might not actually solve the problem, unfortunately, it does give you a layer of protection. It does allow you to keep some of your self-esteem and yourself. Because once you realise that a lot of people, a lot of judgment, a lot of attacks, etc., a lot of hatreds are projections. Obviously there's some things in this world that it's, you know, it makes perfect sense to hate or be angry about. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. But a lot of the time, like for example, personal judgments that people might make, it's often a projection. It's often somebody lashing out with something that's hurting them, but they can't sit with it, they never learned how. So it's coming out at you. I think about this a lot with LGBT stuff. I think that, especially when you see homophobia in certain men, I think that it comes from, this is just my perspective, I'm obviously a woman, so, you know, I don't know the mind, what it's like to be, you know, to be a man. But obviously going up closely with Dan and seeing what he's had to contend with and, you know, reading other perspectives and things, I do think that in some ways it's this wound that's passed down because men are expected to be a certain way, and to be feminine is seen as wrong, and therefore it kind of gets turned on like gay people. Maybe there's like a misplaced envy in some cases that these are people who, despite their struggles, are able to show that vulnerability, are able to be themselves. I think there's kind of like a deep envy. Psychologically thinking, that's how I see it anyway. I see a lot of envy in it. I do see a lot of that in transphobia as well. I think that in some cases, a lot of people who have struggled from even within the community themselves have that feeling of almost an unspoken resentment that they themselves can't name, that things are getting easier for kids and that things are changing. And like I said, like, I think there's two types of reactions to these things. You either want to help those people or you make it more difficult, and you kind of resent them. And it's just sad. It's just sad, really. I try and think about it as a sad thing rather than a terrible thing, because if you think those people are lost, then that's a very depressing way to look at the world, isn't it? I like to think that most people have the capacity for good in them, and maybe they have suffered themselves. They have had negative stuff in their heads that they've never gone through, and they project it outwards. And I believe that those people can change. I'm no longer gonna, like, obviously in the past I've like put up with too much and I've accepted it, like, and even made excuses for things, but that's not me now. Like, I've changed a lot, so I will hold people to account for those things. But it's important to me to also hold in my mind, like, where is that coming from? Why is it happening? Even if that just means, you know, you're stopping that in other people, and it helps us with ourselves too. I think that we all have like the capacity to have those feelings of, our own feelings of low self-worth can often end up being put onto other people. So I feel like, for example, people who, like, say as a writer, I'm quite lucky because I'm very confident in my writing. So I'm not confident in a lot of things in my life, but one thing that I am very confident and happy with is my ability to write. I like my work, I love writing, I like reading my stuff back, I enjoy it, I know I'm good. But I think if you're somebody who doesn't have that confidence, your envy at other people who maybe are doing something that you wish you were doing, or somebody that you admire, it gets all messed up in their minds. I've seen that happen before, from good people as well. It kind of gets mixed up in people's heads and they can't really wade through it themselves. It's too painful, maybe the vulnerability, feeling like they're not good enough. And the sad thing is, most of these people are brilliant. A lot of these people have a lot of talent, and, you know, they really are good, and it's literally that envy that's kind of eating them up. It's that their low self-esteem is hurting other people and it's hurting them, and it just doesn't help anyone at all. Sorry, I don't know why I'm even talking about that. These aren't like planned videos, I just like to chat after therapy. So, but I have been thinking a lot about, you know, like projection, and how a lot of the things that we learn to take on as kind of adjectives, ways to describe ourselves, are actually inaccurate. And as you get older, I'm going through a process of trying to figure out in my head, like, obviously I had low self-esteem, heavy guilt and shame, all those different things that, you know, if you come from certain situations, you have. But as you get older, you need to kind of go through in your head, like, it is not that the emotions themselves are bad. You don't want to go the other way. You don't want to become someone who, because you've been made to feel wrongfully guilty and wrongfully ashamed, that you then just completely disregard those emotions, because they're helpful to us. They're like a signal. If we do something that's against our morals or we hurt someone's feelings, it's really healthy to feel those things. But so many of us, like, got kind of wired the wrong way, where we felt them about the wrong things. So, like, I told you before, like, sometimes I feel shame, like, I'm trying to fight it, but I just get shame and guilt for, like, existing sometimes. Like, I feel like a burden, etc. But that's not something that was ever mine. That's not something that is true of me, and it's not something that came from me. That's an exterior thing. And as I'm getting older, I'm starting to figure out, like, what it is right to feel bad about, and what isn't mine to hold. And that's just so liberating to know, like, the stuff that isn't mine. because, you know, people can throw words at you, etc. But if you know yourself, if you're able to look at your own flaws, you know, if you know your good points and your bad points, if you know you're not a perfect person, but you know that you're trying your best, it makes it so much easier when people throw things at you, because you know what's yours to hold and what isn't. I'm not saying it's like really easy, because it is like a battle, but it's something I'm learning anyway. So something I think about a lot is how when I was growing up, I was always kind of called like dramatic or a hypochondriac or an attention seeker. That was the message I received, and I think a lot of you guys would have felt the same, because it was a time when, I think it's like it's a society timing thing really, like when mental health issues weren't really spoken about. So if you were somebody that wanted to look into that stuff, were interested in it and thought you might have a problem, the instinctive reaction from people, because back then it wasn't like taken seriously, was that you're like attention seeking or dramatic, just get on with it, just get a grip. And over time, like, that really erodes certain parts of you, and it becomes a part of your identity, you know. But I've realised, you know, later on, I took that on when I was younger, thinking, oh, maybe I'm just dramatic, maybe I'm this, maybe I'm that, maybe I'm this hysterical woman. And as I've got older and looking back, it's so much easier for me to say, actually no, because, you know, those things that I was kind of derided for, or told that I was, you know, attention seeking, etc., have now, I was correct. You know, I've now been formally diagnosed. We have better knowledge on it now. So yeah, I don't carry that one with me anymore. And that's a killer for women, isn't it? You know, being like extra emotional, dramatic, like being dismissed because of that. So you add mental health issues to that, and that's a lot. It really gets into your mind. It makes you second guess yourself a lot. And in some ways it's made me go the other way. Like, in some ways, like, I don't necessarily always register or react immediately to how bad something is, because I'm so determined not to be hysterical or dramatic, that sometimes, you know, I'll get mistreated and I let things go. And obviously, like, on the channel recently, when I was getting harassed by, like, the family, other parts of the family, etc., I know that for, like, obviously I was low at the time, but obviously it really did take me like a week and a bit of this like ongoing like harassment campaign to really even like register it, because I kind of have this thing in my head where I'm like, don't be dramatic, like don't make too much of it. So to have exterior people, you know, be able to say like, no, you're actually being underdramatic here. This is a problem, it's okay, it should stop. It means a lot. That's why I love YouTube anyway, because it's different people from outside, you know, being able to tell me like what kind of is right and normal and what isn't, because sometimes some of us grow up with a very skewed sense of that. Anyway, yeah, so I'm kind of feeling like, for ages I was like, thought I was like this hypochondriac and that was really dramatic, but actually no, looking back I was like, I can be kinder to that child and say, no, actually you were doing the best of what you had, you realised that you weren't well, you tried to help yourself, which was proactive, you know, you weren't passive, you actually tried to help yourself, which is good. I try and think how I'd talk to myself now, if I met my young self now, what I'd say to them as a kid, because sometimes when it's yourself you forget how vulnerable you were as a kid. But if it was a child, you know, I'd say, you know, well done for identifying it and well done for trying to get help. You're not dramatic, the people around you just don't understand, you know, you're very loved, it will all get better, but you're not dramatic or a hypochondriac or an attention seeker or a burden or anything. And yeah, I know those things now, but I wish I could say those things to that kid, really. But yeah, so what I'm trying to do is, so I did something this morning, I'm trying to work through like rebuilding myself and self-esteem, etc. And obviously I'm wearing makeup today and actually proper clothes, and the last time I did this was for Dan's birthday, which was a while ago. So yeah, I'm trying to sort of come back to who I was, but also I think I've said before, like, I don't want to be wearing makeup all the time, it just depends on my mood. I need to try and stop thinking about like how people perceive me. I need to stop that. I need to stop worrying about that, really. Obviously, unless I actually do something that's horrible and wrong, then in which case, obviously, you know, tell me. But, you know, stuff like that, I need to have boundaries and think, wait, no. It doesn't matter. Like, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if you're wearing makeup or if you're not wearing makeup. Just do what you want. Do what you want to do. Like, I've never done that before. I've never really sat with myself and asked myself, what do you want? How do you feel? Put yourself first. And it still makes me feel selfish. It still does make me feel really selfish. I don't know, it's confusing. But anyway, yeah, so I did this list this morning. I was asked to do this list. I have this like self-help book. And it's a list of like your achievements or your strengths. and it's supposed to really help find yourself and support yourself if you've had a lot of invalidation, or you might have come from abuse, etc. Because that stuff doesn't come easily to you. It didn't grow in you the way that it did in other people. So you have to grow it as an adult, which is harder. It's much more difficult, I think. But I'm trying to do it. So I thought I'd share my list with you, and I don't know if you guys wanted to take part. And again, I'm sorry about this light. I really don't know how this is going to look when I edit it. I hope it's okay. But yeah, I thought I'd share my list with you, and maybe you might want to share. Maybe you might relate to some things. I feel like a lot of us have stuff in common. Every time I read one of your stories that you put in the comments, I relate to something in it, even if not all of it, you know. And I'm very, very touched by the kindness of the people on the channel, for seeing me as a whole person in a way that maybe I haven't really seen myself, ever. I got this really nice message from somebody, shout out to Joseph, I believe. I was actually just having a low moment, and your comments come, you know, just whenever you send them, and sometimes they come up when I'm a bit low, and it just really made me smile. So kind to me. You know, despite, you know, we might be differing on certain political views, but the fact that you saw me as like a full person and were kind and lovely, and that you'd had some of the same experiences, it really meant a lot to me. it was really, it meant a lot, thank you. Seeing myself as a full person is really helpful. And also, I don't want to get into black and white thinking where I, like, think of other people, like, as if they're not full people as well. Sometimes as a defense mechanism, when you feel really, like, low and attacked, like, I feel like that's a defense mechanism. I don't want to be like that. I think I've said before, I want to be compassionate and hold empathy for people and kindness. And I do think that there's a lot of good in people. I do. I think it's the choices we make. I think we all have good and bad in us, but we have to choose what we do. So, okay, so I'm going to read you some of my list. This might not be interesting to you at all, but it's good for me, like, looking back and just trying to figure out who the hell I am, really, and who I want to be going forwards. 27, rebuilding. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so number 1 that I put on my list, and yeah, if you want to do this as well, like, it would be really cool to hear. I don't know, it might be personal, but you could put it in the comments if you wanted, like, any of your strengths that you feel like you've maybe underplayed, or you just want to be, like, reminded, or just to say it to yourself, like, it's not selfish. I had trouble writing this because I felt selfish. Like, it still feels weird to me to compliment myself on who I am. Like, I can kind of do it in terms of writing because that's something that I do. Something that I can do well. But in terms of me as a person, it still feels selfish. I get this, like, this feeling of, like, you know, when magnets repel. It feels like that. I just get, like, really bad guilt attached to that. So I want to try and get more comfortable with it. So number 1 I put is that I am loving and empathetic. So I wrote here that I've been through some stuff, as you know, some of it, not all of it, but some of it, but it hasn't made me cold. And if it ever has made me cold, then I fought back and I kept my humanity and my kindness, and I've really fought to cling on to that and to bring myself back. If I've ever felt myself going into that place, I've really tried to grab myself back from it. And, you know, my love for Dan, for example, our relationship, probably helped me there as well. Having that person that you love unconditionally. Yeah, so it's made me, I am quite loving and I am quite empathetic. So I try to feel compassion for people. I try to think about how other people feel. I try to treat other people with kindness, and I try to be polite. Like, if I'm out, like, I try, like, if, like, someone smiles at me, I try and smile back, and, like, I hold doors open and things. I try to, like, if, I rarely go out because of being ill, you know, but when I do, if I ever do go out, then I try to, like, be nice to people and understand that there's people working, and, like, people have been working all day, for example, and, like, sometimes they need a bit of a pick up and a thank you, that kind of thing. I try and appreciate those things. I also think that I give love very freely. I feel love very strongly, and I try to let people know how much I love them. So something that I do is, even when things are difficult with people, I still try and, like, I still hold that love and let them know that it's not, I don't know, sometimes in my family it can feel like, or it has felt like, if there's an argument, it's like everything's cut and gone and it's so unstable, and, like, I don't know, it's just weird. But to be able to have that love and also know that, like, people are gonna disagree on things, people are gonna have these issues, but the love can still exist throughout. that's something I wanted to hold on to, because I'd seen in my life modelled some unhealthy stuff, you know, of like huge rifts, huge grudges, hatreds growing, resentments and stuff that became really toxic and horrific and monstrous, really, like just growing into something so out of proportion and huge. And I know that watching that, like, I didn't want that. I didn't want part of that. I don't want that at all. So yeah, so I try and I think I'm quite loving and empathetic, and I try to be. I do try. I don't know. I try. That's all I can say. Number 2, I am creative and passionate. So I have big emotions, and I might have had like bad experiences in the past, but at least that I am creative and it goes into my art. Like, I won't let it be in vain. I won't let it be that I went through any struggles or pain, things that I shouldn't have gone through, but I won't let that. That's not going to cause me further pain now, because what I have now is a chance to know better. And I think I've said it before, like the idea of parenting your inner child, and some of that stuff I've got to do for myself. And with Dan, really, a lot of this process is the two of us together, because we are so close, we're like a unit. And figuring stuff out. But I'm lucky that I'm creative, and I do see it as a strength, because it's like a therapy. It's like therapy to me. So I've written a novel, which I hope to get published soon. It needs like a second like big edit, etc. But yeah, so that's going to get published. I write a lot of poetry, short stories, prose, all that kind of stuff, and like especially song lyrics and things. Like, if you go back through some of my songs, I think in some ways I don't even recognise sometimes how much of my experience is being put into those. I see it as something separate, and then sometimes I listen back to the lyrics and I realise, like, yeah. So, yeah, it's really helped. It's been like a real lifeline to me to be creative, to love art, like to love symbolism. It's helped me in situations where maybe you can't be so direct. Symbolism gives you that voice. It allows you in some ways a safe way to map or remember things. It just allows you that safety of expression, and I'm creative, so I put that as a strength. And number 3 is that I am, or I try to be, a good sister. I hope Dan would agree. I hope so. I definitely try to be the best sister that I can to Dan. So we're both navigating a lot of external things, but I love Dan. I want the best for him. It's a very unconditional love. I try to be as supportive as I possibly can be. If I ever am cruel or unkind or do wrong, then it's important to me that I acknowledge that and apologise and make things right. I think I've said before, in our family, like, there's been a lot of stuff that's happened and there's been no apologies. It's just been like swept under the carpet, or even turned around, so the victim is made into the aggressor in the family story, kind of thing. It's very topsy-turvy, and I'm just glad I have Dan to like kind of ground me, you know, like some kind of like reality and sanity, like to hold me there. Otherwise I'd just get twisted around and I wouldn't know what was going on. I'd probably be convinced I was crazy if it wasn't for Dan. Thank you, Dan. I think I'm a good sister. I'm going to continue to keep trying to be, doing whatever I can to be a better sister, and to be there for Dan. I want to be a good auntie. That's really important to me. So Dan wants to have kids. I did want to have kids, but I don't know if that's going to happen now. It's something I'm just trying to not be sad about, because there's no point. A lot of the processes in life, the milestones, have gone for me very differently. There's been a lot of loss, which is hard to wrestle with. I think you guys probably know what I'm talking about. Like, you might feel the same thing. There's a lot of loss, a lot of catching up and stuff that maybe you never get back, which is hard to not feel angry about, but I try not to feel angry about it. But yeah, it might not be that I have kids. I don't know if I'm well enough, stable enough. Who knows? I need to get a handle on myself first and be independent first. But it's important to me, like, I know that when Dan has kids, I want to be a really good auntie. I want to be kind and supportive and spoil them, of course. And I want them to be able to, like, ring me if they have a problem. Like Dan, obviously, when he's, like, whatever he's doing, like modelling, acting, etc. Who knows, the new James Bond, maybe. I hope that he will be able to, like, drop the kids with me, or if him and his partner are, like, away, and, I can, like, look after them. And this probably sounds like a really silly thing to even talk about, because you probably think, like, yeah, that is how families are, but that's not how things were in our family. I had that uncle that, like, abusive and unkind, like, culminated quite recently, threats and stuff. So that was kind of, I guess that was what we knew. But obviously as we got older we realised it's not normal, and I think like we watched stuff like Umbrella Academy and stuff like that, and Doctor Who, Rusty Davies' Doctor Who helped a lot with actually starting to understand that that's not normal, and like that's not going to be us going forward. And I also think like maybe it's selfish, I don't know, but I think it'll probably be quite like a healing good experience, like not to put pressure on Dan but like with the next generation I think it will just be really nice to be able to put some things right or differently. Like you can't really go back for yourself, but you can maybe give that to other people. And anyway, I just know that I'll just love Dan's kids anyway, like, because they're Dan's. Well, they could be the most awful people in the world ever, and I would just love them forever because they're Dan's kids. I'd never be cruel to them, and if I ever was, I would apologise to them and like give them a hug, and yeah, I'm excited to meet them. That's something I think about sometimes. No pressure on Dan. You might not, you know, he might change his mind. He might not want kids in the future. Who knows? But if he does, I'm very much looking forward to meeting them. I think that going forward, I'm trying to like figure out what's normal and what's not. Maybe things that other people might take for granted. I don't know. I know that Dad sent me this video a couple of weeks ago, and I'd never seen it before. One of my uncles, one of my Indian uncles, was going through their videos, and there was a bit of footage of Mum and Dad were at his house, and I was like in a little like like a little rocking stroller thing, and he was like stroking my hair. Like I must have been like less than 1 year old. I was a really happy baby, you could tell. And he was like stroking my hair, and like you could tell how much he like really cared about me, and he was like, oh Claudia, look, like, you know, stroking my hair. It was really emotional for me to see that. Yeah, in a good way, in a really good way, but obviously I didn't remember it, so what I learned after was so different. I remember when I first started seeing my dad again, after a long time, and I was so nervous about it, and I'm quite a perfectionist, eager to please, like I feel like I have to be perfect, like I want people to like me. I feel like, you know, back then I felt like there was something wrong with me, and I know now that there wasn't, like the situation was wrong, not me. And I remember being so nervous about meeting my aunts and uncles again, my Indian aunts and uncles, and I was so nervous, so stressed. Would they like me? What if they hated me? Like, God, what if I was a burden and like I'm at their house, they don't want me there, and I don't want to talk about like myself, like they might think I'm arrogant, or just so much stress. And I remember like confiding in Dad a bit and saying like, I'm nervous, I'm really scared, I really want them to like me, I don't want them to hate me. And I remember him turning around to me and he was really shocked, and it actually makes me kind of sad thinking about it. And he kind of said to me like, Claudia, why would they hate you? They love you, you know, they're your family, they're your aunts and uncles, they love you. And looking back, that makes me really sad, because that was normal for lots of people, and for me it was strange and different. Yeah, I still find it really weird now, even like after I hadn't seen them for so long. One of my aunties gave me a hug recently, just, you know, and they got me when my grandma Bibi passed. I sing obviously, and they wanted me to do like a couple of songs for her at her old house, and everyone was there, and it was just so alien to me. Like a whole room of my family were like cheering me on and part of it and happy for me, and it was very, very emotional, and I felt my grandma Bibi in that, you know. It felt like a repairing, you know, something I never had, I never knew as a child. I'd learned things very differently, but this is what love was supposed to feel like. That's how you're supposed to feel, you know, with your wider family. So yeah, anyway, sorry. So number 4 is that I think I'm good at emotionally caring for people and making them feel happy, I think. But I understand others. I try to like map psychologies and stuff, because I'm a writer, I'm really interested in that. So I try to be delicate with people that need me to be delicate, and to think about like their boundaries and what will make them feel happy. Like sometimes I do this too much, like obviously, like I said, like I over empathise with people, but sometimes it's a good thing. If the other person isn't going to abuse that, then it can be a really good thing, because you can be very close, and that vulnerability makes you very strong. And one example of this is, so I I think I've spoken about this quite a lot before, but I have a really close and precious relationship with my granddad. This light is really bad. Let me just change the angle. Okay, I'm just going to try and stay out of the light. But I have this really, like, precious relationship with him that is, like, this total anomaly and shouldn't exist because we're such opposites. So Grandad is a very old school gentleman, you know, doesn't talk much about his feelings. He's an observer. He's a thinker. He doesn't say much unless he's prompted. And then you've got me on the other side, who's like very, very emotional, very empathetic. I like to talk about feelings, all those different things. And somehow, out of nowhere, you just couldn't have expected it. We just formed this bond that was really tight, and we're so opposite. And I remember he used to drive me to, like, he's driven me to loads of therapy appointments, you know, I used to go there after driving lessons. I see them all the time. I see Grandad all the time, and Grandma. But it just seems more, it seems more kind of like rare and special in a way, because obviously, like, Grandma and I are quite similar in the sense that we're both quite, like, outspoken women, and we're both like arty stuff. We're both those sort of people. But with Grandad and I, we're so different. And I kind of used maybe that skill to think, like, okay, this is someone who thinks differently to me and expresses differently to me, and to understand that. And we kind of grew this sort of understanding with each other, and we have, like, these really deep conversations, and sitting with Grandad and hearing about his past and his memories, and giving him that space to talk, you know, let him sit with his thoughts, when to speak, when not to speak. I don't know, I feel like, in some ways, like, I was given a bit of a gift because I do over-empathise to cope, but in some ways it allowed me to have that very close bond with my granddad. Like, it's something that's so strange and rare and, like, shouldn't make any sense, but it really does. Like, it's very, very precious to me because I feel like I understand in the ways that he shows his love and the way I show my love, and we do it differently, but that doesn't cause a problem because we know that we do it differently. Yeah, I don't know, it's just really special to me, that relationship. Like, we are, yeah, I don't know how else to say, like, I'm very, very lucky. It's so unexpected, out of nowhere, like, these opposite personalities. Also, kind of on that topic, I think I'm quite good at, like, because I empathise, or I try and think about, or listen to what people tell me about themselves, and think about their worldview, it makes me quite a good present buyer. I do get compliments on my present buying, because I try to listen to, like, what people really, really like, and what their interests are, and yeah, I'm quite good at buying presents, and I actually prefer giving presents to receiving presents, which is weird. Not that I don't appreciate the presents I get, like, Dan especially, like, he gets me, like, fandom related presents, like, loads of the stuff behind me is from Dan. I love that, but I still have this, like, I have this kind of inbuilt guilt still, weirdly, so I never feel completely comfortable when receiving a gift. I almost feel a bit embarrassed. I'm really grateful afterwards, not in an ungrateful sense, but just that initial reaction of feeling like it's selfish or wrong to accept a gift. Maybe, I don't know, I'm kind of working through that. And also in the sense of, like, emotionally understanding people or caring for people, it has, like, obviously allowed me, like, to be really close to, like, I haven't mentioned Grandma so much because we're more similar, so it's not so, you know, striking as the bond that Grandad and I have, which is super strong out of nowhere. It's like, I visualise it's, like, glowing, it's, like, really pure, like, I don't know where it came from. I'm glad I have it. But, yeah, like, obviously it's made me really close to Grandma as well. Like, when I feel sad, sometimes I have, like, negative self-talk in my head. You know how it is, like, awful stuff, like, you know, all that stuff that you've learned, like, oh, kill yourself, you're a burden, you're this, you're that, etc. And then I sometimes will hear, like, Grandma, for example, like, her voice cutting through, and I hear it, like, she calls me my Claudia. She goes, how's my best girl, how's my Claudia, like, she calls me, like, her joy, and I try and, like, hold on to those things. Yeah, that's kind of not on topic, but, like, that's something that I'm trying to do to kind of counter the negative stuff in my head, because I know I can't get rid of that stuff. I can counter it, though. I can counter it. Okay, number 5 on the list, and I'm sorry this is so long, I'll try and get a bit faster. So I think one of my strengths is that I can acknowledge my mistakes and my flaws, and I try to do my best to correct them or do better. So I'm quite self-reflective. And sometimes I take this a bit too far, so I beat myself up for things that maybe weren't my fault, or I want to take the guilt or burden off somebody else, so I take stuff on, which is bad. But in some ways it's really good, because I would rather be somebody that's able to admit to my flaws and to change them. Because I almost think as well, like, first of all, it's a good thing to be able to feel guilt. People that don't feel guilt scare me, honestly. I don't get it, because I feel it so much. But also, the guilt on its own isn't enough. Like, you have to also not just feel the guilt and wallow in it. Some people get guilt and then it turns inwards and then they lash out, and it's still negative, even then. But I try and take it a step further and think, well, there's no good. If you've hurt somebody, there's no good sitting there, like, wallowing in it. What can you do now? Like, you can't change the past, but what can you do? What can you do differently? How will you do things differently next time? Like, how can you show that person that you love them? Like, I try to do that. I'm quite self-reflective. I do that a lot. I think a lot. And I think sometimes on YouTube as well, especially in the past, because I didn't like to show my vulnerabilities very much, and I almost had to put up a defence and seem more confident and more sort of like, I don't know, because of the extent of the trolling and stuff, being like a feminist YouTuber, etc. Sometimes I probably went the other way, and I became like, I seemed, the persona I was putting out would have seemed quite forceful. But the actual reality is that I'm actually, as you know now, I'm very full of doubt. I think about stuff all the time. I have so many regrets. I'm always thinking about how I can do things differently. But I think that can be a strength. Yeah, because if you're willing to admit your mistakes, then you can do better and things can change. And hopefully, you know, if that becomes more normal, if people start realising that it's okay to do those things, then it won't be this taboo and people won't feel weak for it, you know? Not to get into, like, social issues in this video. That is the one problem that I do have with so-called cancel culture. So I think I've said before that cancel culture doesn't exist. I do think it exists, but not in the sense that right-wingers sometimes use it, as in to be anti-accountability, but I think people should be accountable and people should change. But the one thing that I do really hate, and I do have a problem with, and it's hard to talk about because you get taken as being one of those, like, super, super right-wing people who thinks people shouldn't be held accountable, but that's not me. But the one thing I do think is that accountability is important, but there also needs to be the scope for growth, because otherwise where's the hope? Where is the hope in it? It's like how I think about, like, not to get into social issues, but part of, like, prison, for example, and everything, it is rehabilitation and change, education. Because if you don't change, if people have to be able to change, otherwise, like, what's the point? I don't know, I just worry about that sometimes. I do sometimes find that uncomfortable. But it's hard to talk about that because you don't want to give any, like, any support to those, like, awful people who are like, you know, oh no, PC gone mad, like, not that. But yeah, I do think about that sometimes, and it does bother me, because I think if we were all completely honest, I think that it's very easy to cast judgment on people. It takes a lot more to be able to look at yourself, and I think sometimes the reason why people are so judgmental for things that are quite small sometimes is because people are afraid of their own, they feel like they have to be perfect, they're afraid of their own flaws and their mistakes. It doesn't really help anyone. It might feel good in the moment. That doesn't move anything forward. Nothing changes that way. That's my perspective anyway. Like, that's just my worldview. You might disagree, but that's how I think. Okay, so I kind of tied on to that. Number 6 is that, so I'm quite forgiving. So yeah, again, sometimes I do this too much and it can veer into the other way. So, like, people can hurt me and I'll just forgive it because I empathise too much and I just think, oh, maybe they're having a bad day, or maybe this, maybe that. Like, I always try to think about someone's psychology as if that makes it okay. Like, some of the stuff when I was a kid, for example, even as a kid, I'd be thinking, well, maybe so-and-so person feels insecure or jealous, or maybe it's this, maybe it's that, you know, desperately trying to find answers and forgiving. But in some ways it's a strength if you do it with boundaries. I'm trying to get better with boundaries. Like, I'm not going to forgive somebody, like, unless they're sorry and they show that they've changed. But I'm the sort of person that if somebody is genuinely sorry, oh god, the light, if someone is genuinely sorry, they've changed, they've grown, I am quite a forgiving person. I know that's a really personal thing, not to shame anyone who isn't like that, but that's me. I don't know what's going on with this light out here. Like, some sort of, like, disco things going on here. Sorry, I've had to completely change position because that light was just unbearable. I don't know what it's doing, it never does that. I don't know why I'm calling it a light. It's the sun, it's the sun. Thank you, sun, for keeping us warm and alive. Okay, so number 7, I think one of my strengths I have is that I do care about justice and things being fair, and I feel that really keenly. So that's a good thing, I think. I do care about social issues. I do care if things don't seem fair for people, if I think people are being unfairly targeted, if I think something's being manipulated, especially by the media. Like, there's a lot of power. The media has a lot of power. and I get very, very upset and angry when I see that happening. I just don't think the media should be run like that. Like, I don't think media should be propaganda, you know, like, I worry about the BBC a lot in that sense as well. A lot of things I like about the BBC, because obviously Doctor Who, all that stuff, EastEnders, the great shows on the BBC. But in terms of the news coverage, I just think it should be, if it's going to be impartial, it needs to be impartial. And I don't know, I just, bad vibes, very bad vibes. I might talk about that more in another video one day, but not here. But like, I do have like quite an inherent like sense of wanting things to be fair, because like maybe growing up things weren't necessarily fair. I've spoken a bit before about things, how things maybe weren't fair towards my mum. Saw that happening, felt powerless, grew up and felt like I didn't want other people to be powerless, and I didn't want to be powerless. So that became a thing for me. And obviously, like, one of my principles is I'm a socialist, so and that's another thing that as well is quite funny, is that some people think that if you're a socialist, like, as like a checkmate, they're like, oh, okay, but you're, like, for example, right now I'm having private therapy, which I'm so lucky to have, which is something other people don't have, and I do feel some guilt about that. But also, I kind of think, like, it's not that I don't think people should, like, have money or anything, like, it's not that. It's just that I think sorry about the dogs next door. Like, if I did get rich, say for example that, like, my novel does really well and gets picked up and I make a lot of money, it's important to me that, like, I'd still, even though I had money, I would still believe that I should be taxed more, because there are people who are vulnerable, and because I was once vulnerable, you know? I don't really understand people who make it and then kind of pull the ladder up, because we can choose to make things better for other people, you know? And I do believe that, and hold me to that. If I ever do become successful, and, like, say I make a lot of money from my novels, and you see me becoming like that, like, tell me. I will keep an eye on that. And also, like, obviously I care about people who aren't just like me, for example, like, from when I was quite young, like, adverts for, you know, you'd see, like, starving kids in adverts and things. And for some people there's almost a distance. I think some of it's like the colour of people's skin, like, sometimes it's the physical distance. People will cut off their empathy for different groups, I think. And I just never have understood it. If I see something on the news, like the world news, it really affects me. And some people can just, like, watch the news casually, but I can't do that because it actually upsets me. Like, if I see in another country people fleeing war or something awful like that, I can't just then switch back over to something else. Like, that's not casual viewing to me. Like, I feel like every single one of those people is, like, us, or me, or could be me. It's just an accident of birth where you end up, what country you end up in, what situation you're in. And obviously I think we all do have, like, prejudices based on, like, where we are, for example. I think that's quite natural. But I do try and work against that. And I get really upset when, like, I don't know, there's stuff going on right now, like, there's a lot of nastiness towards the Gypsy Roma traveller community here right now, and trans people as well, two groups that are especially bearing a lot of the brunt here right now. And I can't get my head around it. I can't get my head around the way that people talk about Gypsy Roma traveller people. Sometimes they talk about them as if they're animals. They're just people living a different culture, the same internal lives as us. Like, we're all different from each other anyway. We're not all the same. Why do we have to be the same to be of value? I don't know. Okay, so number 8, kind of leading off of that, is that one thing that I am proud of is that I am someone who will stand up and say something, even if it scares me or it might make me a bit unpopular. As you can probably tell, because, you know, the whole reason, like, my YouTube kind of became big was because I spoke about a lot of feminist stuff. And, you know, obviously that was, you got a lot of stuff for that, like a lot of really disproportional attacks and things. But then I kind of, in some ways I was raised for that. I was raised to be able to deal with that in ways other people couldn't, because that comes from, if that comes from your own family setup, and you're used to being scapegoated and that, you know, all that stuff, this kind of thing just doesn't hit you so much. It's hard to describe that. I know some people thought that was really weird at the time. I remember Dad, at the time, there used to be, like, these different videos made about me, etc. And Dad would be like, are you not, like, really upset? Like, he was more upset for me. And it was like, how do I explain that that's nothing? That's nothing. I don't know these people. Like, I've dealt with worse from people that should have loved me and cared about me. Like, this is nothing compared to that. I remember in year 7, that's the first year of secondary school, in my report, my form tutor wrote that I was a fierce defender of the underdog, and I don't know if she meant that in a good way or not. I don't know, like, it's hard to tell, but I was proud of it because that was what I wanted to be for my mum when I was younger. In some ways, I was. So I was glad that kind of like carried through. I do remember at school, like, I had this bit of a weird reputation at school because, like, I was really well behaved, very well behaved. So I had mental health difficulties as well, though, which made me seem naughty sometimes, but I wasn't. So, like, not in terms of like being rude or anything, but like low attendance, things like that. Panic attacks and things like that. Also undiagnosed ADHD, which I've actually got my appointment on Monday. Can you believe that? Yeah, I'm just so relieved. Like, the more I look into that, the more I realise, like, yeah, a lot of stuff makes sense. But I remember, like, I always used to, like, stand up against things. Like, I react very strongly to corrupt authority figures. Very much. Like, very strongly. Which you can understand because my background is, like, an instinct in me. Like, for some people, that might have been their first exposure to that kind of thing, so they didn't react very much. But for me, it was like, this is my reality. Like, I'm used to this. No. No. I remember, like, one day we had to choose, there was a charity thing, we had to choose what charity all our money went to. And the kids really wanted, well, I say the kids, I always felt like emotionally older in some regards. Although a lot of the kids were more streetwise than me and more independent, emotionally I obviously had to become an adult pretty fast. So that was really frustrating when I was younger, because sometimes I felt a bit like Lisa Simpson. I don't say that to blow my own trumpet, I just mean because, like, I should have been like that too. Like, I should have been like them too. I just didn't have the chance. Like, I grew up too fast. And they all wanted to give the money to this charity called the Moon Bears. And, like, it was a good charity. Like, you know, these bears were being, like, mistreated. But we could choose any charity we wanted. And I actually asked if I could take some time in registration. I prepared, like, a speech and information for Save the Children because I had seen an advert on it. And I don't know if maybe because of being mixed anyway and automatically knowing that you know, these figures that I loved would be judged by other people as different, just, you know, just for looking different or having a different culture, but they were just my family, just us, you know, they were just the same as us. And I remember, like, I cared a lot about those things, and people thought I was a bit, I don't know, when I left secondary school, I was on the shortlist for most likely to be Prime Minister, out of nowhere. I don't know, I was barely even going into school at that time, so I don't know how that happened. Didn't win it though. Which is probably true though, because I wouldn't have been a very good Prime Minister. And I think I would mean well, but I'm way too emotionally connected to stuff. Like, it would be too much. I also do remember when we were in sixth form, and at this point I think I've said about this before, I was really heading towards a big breakdown. I was dissociating, I was psychotic at times, I had psychosis. I really didn't know what was real, like, I was undergoing a lot of stuff. I was very, very suicidal. And we were doing, I think it was All My Sons, and in the play, the father commits a crime, spoiler alert, and he kills himself at the end because he feels so guilty. And somehow this debate, this conversation was allowed to happen, and it's mad to me, but, like, it got beyond the actual character plot to discussing, like, suicide, and, like, because someone was like, oh, it's selfish to kill yourself, and etc, etc, and you know how these conversations go, and this was, like, in an A-level class. And I remember literally just sitting there and, like, feeling disgusted, and just, I couldn't help it. Like, I actually, like, when it was my turn to speak, I waited, and then I was like, I think I actually said, I must have been unbearable. I really must have been, but I wasn't well. And I was like, I actually think that's disgusting, that, you know, there's no compassion for that person. Like, when people commit suicide, it doesn't mean that they're selfish. Like, they're ill. You know, most of the time those people are ill. Anyway, one of my friends still remembers me doing that. My memories of that time are so hazy, but that's one of the things I do remember. So, we also used to at school, this is so bad, I'm sure they wouldn't do it now, but they used to actually make us, like, we would debate LGBT rights in religious studies. So that would actually be a thing that happened. Like, not just, like, in terms of a certain issue, but, like, do LGBT people deserve rights, or are they wrong? That was a thing that was discussed around GCSE time. And when I look back, it's so bad, because there are, out of the class of people that I remember, 4 of us ended up being LGBT. And probably more. You know, there could be more in that class that just weren't out. Yeah, mad. Okay, sorry, I'm getting there. Number 9. So for me, I'm quite articulate. So I can put words to my feelings and my experiences, and I'm quite lucky to be able to do that, to be a writer. I think maybe, I try to think maybe that's the reason. Maybe the reason that I have these issues and this background, for example, is that I am articulate, and maybe I was always supposed to combine the things. Like, maybe that was meant to happen. I don't know, but I am quite articulate, and I'm happy about that. Like, I don't know if it's necessarily something to be proud of, because it's not like a fault or a flaw if you're not articulate. It's just something that helps me a lot, and I feel like is a real strength to me, and has been in my life. Just to be able to put words to these things has been so helpful. Okay, and last of all, this was one that I actually struggled with, and I kind of put it on the list and then took it off again, and I don't know if anyone else gets this. I touched on this at the start of the video. So, for number 10, it just says, I'm talented. And I know it sounds so stupid, like, I actually still feel arrogant and guilty to admit to my talents, even when I know where they are. Like, obviously I'm not like, if I was like super arrogant, I'm like, oh, I'm great at everything, like that would be ridiculous. But no, there are certain things that I am very talented at. Like, I'm a very good writer. I like my work. I get good feedback on my work. Obviously I got first in my degree. I'm doing my master's. I'm good at it. I am good at writing. I'm very talented at that. I'm a good singer. I'm a fairly decent songwriter. You know, it's probably not everyone's taste, but it's still a talent to be able to do it. I like art. I'm quite a good artist. I'm quite good at sketching. And it still feels weird to say those things, because growing up I felt like it was bad to admit being good at anything, because it would make people angry or upset, and it would make me big-headed. So I went the other way. So I'm trying to build myself up. So I hope I don't sound arrogant like saying them here. But no, I was always good at those things, and I am still good at those things. And nobody should ever have made me feel like it was wrong to feel like I had talent or worth, really. Or that I didn't deserve love or kindness, because I did deserve those things. And we all deserve those things, all of us. Even unkind people, I think, deserve those things. I really do. Because I think if they had those things, they wouldn't be so unkind. So yeah, okay, that's the end of the video. It's like a really long one, I'm really sorry about that. But it's mostly for me, really. So I can watch it back sometimes and think, okay, right, what are your strengths? Yeah, so if you want to share any of those, any of yours, or anything you relate to here, a lot of our experiences kind of overlap, I find. So, I don't know, the more I talk about things, the more it seems to help, because I get messages from people on various social media platforms saying like a certain thing stuck out to them, something that wouldn't have seemed to me worthy of making a video of its own, but it related to someone, and that really helps. I know that helps, because when you guys leave comments and you can relate, I feel so relieved. I sit there and I think, oh my gosh, thank you. Like, I'm not crazy, like, other people experience this. I don't know how we're going to navigate this stuff, I don't know. Some people that seem to be on the same journey as me at the same time. I hope we get through this. But yeah, I'll see you next week for another video. Still making my video down, of course, looking forward to that. Also got some ideas that I wanted to do, like some more structured mental health videos coming up. They're just ideas at the moment, but it's good for me, and I think it might help other people. And I'm trying to use what happened to me and going forward to try and like provide what I didn't get. You know, maybe that's the point. Maybe that is the point. So, yeah. Alright, I love you loads. Yeah, and I'll see you really soon. Okay, love you. Bye.